So I moved the heaters onto the next outlet, the home run outlet, plugged them back in, got everything back fired up. I got the okay to get a couple more things done in this existing panel. I'm going to be replacing the 40 amp 2-pole breaker across from the one that burned up. I'm also going to be adding a QP 15 amp breaker to the left hand bottom side of this panel. Two breakers above the one I'm going to install was a double tap breaker. I'm going to be adding one to remove the double tap. The last and final thing I'm going to be doing in this panel is I'm going to be wire brushing some of this rust out of here around the bottom of the panel, and I'm going to be galvy spraying this panel to make it last a little bit longer. I already made one video doing preventative maintenance on this panel, and everything looks great from the inside besides this rust, so I think this panel is going to last at least another 10 years. Today I wanted to talk about a problem I had in an existing customer's house where the heater was causing the breaker to trip about after 3 or 4 hours. But the problem with this whole setup is something I've never had to deal with before, and I've never had to fix it like this before. So I got to my customer's house, I opened up the panel, put my amp probe on the breaker. I went up to the first outlet I believe to be the home run. I plugged in two space heaters. I put one on low and one on high. This was a 20 amp breaker. I got roughly about 19 amps from this setup, and I just started letting them run. While this was happening, I pulled out my IR camera, started scanning the panel, and I started scanning outside the panel to follow that line out to where it went in the first place. This is a very neat process because you can watch the cable heat up to around 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and then you just follow it straight back through the ceilings in the basement until it gets to where it goes in the first place. And then it goes back into a crawl space. So I followed it all the way around to the first location. I found a junction box that was open, checked that out, make sure all the splices there looked okay, wasn't heating up too much. The cable inside the box was roughly 100 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe 105, and I traced it out of that into the ceiling next to it. So it happens to be, this is actually the first home run, which is in the living room. It's the first outlet in the circuit, and it's an in and out, and then it goes into the next room where I have the heaters plugged in into that outlet. I open up the first outlet, double check the connections, double check the temperature, everything looked great there, and I went back into the room to check on the heaters, and they were tripped. So I moved the heaters onto the next outlet, the home run outlet, plugged them back in, got everything back fired up, and started letting it run again while I investigated some more of the outlets, opened up the one that they were plugged into, and a couple other things, was looking around to find anything else it could be. In the outlet box where the heaters were originally plugged in, it was whites and blacks tied together, so I figured it had to be a switched outlet. Went over to the switch, opened up the switch, I checked out the switch and the connections in the switch box, everything looked okay. So I moved the heaters back onto the second outlet after about half an hour of them running perfectly fine on the first home run outlet. After they were running on here for about half an hour not tripping, I decided to start scanning some more of the stuff around the area to see what was hot. I scanned the switch box and the switch itself, and ended up being that was 150 degrees. And then I realized that switch was not only controlling that outlet, but it was controlling the outlets in this room, the next bedroom over, and the master bedroom. So at this point, the only reason why I think it hasn't tripped again is because I took the cover plate off of the switch, and it's allowing that switch to cool off and stay below its whatever that thermal point is where it would trip out the breaker. So the solution for this problem was I replaced the switch, I rewired the outlet, made it a switched over hot outlet. I turned both the heaters back on, plugged them into the second outlet in this circuit, let them run for about 45 minutes. Didn't find any more problems. IR scanned the rest of the circuit again, checked everything out, closed up the panel downstairs, and I found the solution. It was a bad switch. Well, a switch that was underrated for the circuit that it was on. Furthermore, doing more than what it was supposed to do.